BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays. Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything. That's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show. And Friday is an Anything Goes. Any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. All right, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. This episode of Black Box Online Radio is brought to you by McFarland Books, a great place to explore the true crime world and to learn more about the human experience. Their titles cover subjects ranging from the stories of law enforcement to the unsolved crimes of South Florida. Please visit McFarlandBooks.com for more. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Tuesday, and on several Tuesdays throughout this year, I did a segment on this channel called True Crime Talk Radio, so welcome to the show. And first, a big thank you once again to McFarland Books for some of their sponsorship. And I will be doing a book discussion on one of their titles in the near future, and that will be The Flat Tire Murders, Unsolved Crimes of a South Florida Serial Killer by Michael P. Burns, so please look out for that one in the coming weeks, perhaps, and if you're listening to this in the future, I will have a book discussion on The Flat Tire Murders, Unsolved Crimes of a South Florida Serial Killer by Michael P. Burns. In addition to liking and subscribing and following along with all of the book discussions here on this channel, a great way to support Black Box Online Radio is to go over to Amazon.com and look at my own book, Killer on a White Horse, by me, Ned DeHaan. It is a novel murder mystery inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is fictional. Still, who doesn't love a good mystery? And there is also the Teespring page. Feel free to have a look at some of the merchandise, and remember, being weird is not a crime. So, firstly, there is a piece of Zodiac Killer news that I would like to address in this True Crime Talk Radio segment, and that is that yesterday was the anniversary of the Lake Herman Road murders, the murders of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, which occurred on December 20th of 1968, the first confirmed crime in Zodiac activity, and there was a DNA update that was posted on ZodiacKiller.com, as well as on the social media pages, which says the testing of Zodiac evidence produced a DNA sample. That's the good news. The bad news, the profile belonged to an individual who could not have been the Zodiac Killer. That's as specific as I can be. One possibility is the profile belongs to an accomplice or an unknowing contributor not involved in the crimes. A major complication is during the Zodiac era, a popular form of civil disobedience was to reuse stamps. So just when you think there's going to be some type of major breakthrough using forensic sciences, well, that is, there is always a setback, so to speak, and the book about the flat tire murders that I'll be talking about in the near future really gets into that a lot, about this type of optimism for the forensic world, from the forensic world, rather, about how cases could be solved, cold cases that people thought would never be solved, might actually reach their conclusions. And I think the identification of the Golden State Killer, Joseph D'Angelo, has really shown a lot of clarity to the world of forensic. It's much more powerful than people thought. Forensic sciences can do things that people thought that they couldn't previously do. And I was listening to a discussion about this on the show The Rational Male, just not talking about true crime, but just about how so many times people thought something was impossible, and then it turns out that it is indeed possible. So that's a starting point for the next year. As I said, it is now December, but from the title of this episode, you can see that I will be talking about Tom Voigt's YouTube channel, and there are 3 videos that were recently published out there. One of them is Tom Voigt having a brief discussion with Howard Stern, the king of all media. And before I get into any of the things about the Zodiac Killer and Tom Voigt's brief exchange with Howard Stern, here is an unpopular opinion for you. The older I get, the funnier I find Howard Stern. When I first started listening to Howard Stern, I had no idea that I was even listening to his show. I knew who he was, but back in high school, some some videos were uploaded online to websites prior to YouTube, and there were these two guys, Sal Governale and Richard Christie, and my friend was like, "Oh my gosh, you got to hear these prank phone calls. These guys are so funny." And yeah, I listened to them. I had a good laugh, and then several years later, I found out that oh, they were actually done by Sal and Richard from the Howard Stern show. And in 2011, I started listening to Howard Stern just a little bit. I wasn't even that familiar with who everyone was in the Sterniverse, but then I started listening regularly in 2014, and I've been on and off ever since, and becoming more acquainted with the world of Howard Stern and all of those excellent whack packers that he brings on to the show. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. But back in 2011 or 2014, I never thought Howard Stern was funny. I viewed him as the ringmaster. He was just the orchestrator of all this. He's the guy who's conducting the show, and he put all these people in place to create an entertaining program. But that's just all I thought he was. However, I really found that as I got into my 30s, I found that the phony phone calls of Sal and Richard were much less humorous than I had thought they were in the past, and I absolutely do not find Baba Booey funny at all, and I don't think he would mind if I say that. And I absolutely do not find Robin Quivers funny at all. I mean, how hard is it to go, "Oh, Howard"? Anybody could do that. But I don't know, I think that there actually is somewhat of a comedic wit to Howard Stern as a person and as a radio figure. But yes, there's a brief exchange with Tom Voigt and Howard Stern available on his channel, but more importantly, there are two videos up there now talking about books and crooks where Tom Voigt has responded to some other true crime writers, that being Thomas Henry Horan and Ann Penn. Thomas Henry Horan is the author of The Myth of the Zodiac Killer, and Ann Penn is the author of What If Golden State Killer Zodiac Solved, as well as the book Serial Slaughter. I have interviewed both of them on the channel, the Zodiac Killer channel, the Interview with the Expert series, which is also hosted by me, Ned DeHaan, over there. As far as the response to Thomas Henry Horan, I think there's actually a more detailed one that Tom Voigt has composed in the past. If you go to Black Box Online Radio, you will find Tom Voigt on the Zodiac hoax theory, and he authored a much larger, more detailed response to the Zodiac hoax, and that was something that I had asked him to do just when I was discussing the suspect Richard Gaikowski, and I threw in one final question about what is your response to the hoax theory. So if you are curious and you just simply want to hear more on that subject, the Zodiac hoax theory is the idea that there wasn't a single Zodiac killer operating in 1968 and 69, but instead there were actually an unconnected group of people, and there were real murders that happened, but someone wrote letters taking credit for murders that he didn't commit. That's why it's called the Zodiac hoax. As far as Ann Penn, though, Ann Penn is someone, as I said, I've interviewed her. I've also exchanged numerous correspondences with Ann Penn, and I'm tempted to put her into the category of, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And the reason why is Ann Penn has been very rude to me in our private exchanges, and she has really pushed my limits in terms of patience. Prior to that video being released on Tom Voigt's channel, she had agreed to compose something for Black Box Online Radio, and even though I disagree with somebody's theory, I will discuss it on this show, try to give it an honest response, look at the pros and the cons, and I mean, that's what this channel really is all about, exploring different ideas. It doesn't even have to only be in the true crime world, and she had agreed to do that because Mike Rodelli wrote a very good piece for this channel, and that's available on the episode Zodiac Shell Cavale AMA. But yes, Ann Penn is a believer in the Golden State Killer connection, that Joseph D'Angelo, the Golden State Killer, was also the Zodiac Killer. And in addition to the video that Tom Voigt did about her, I would just want to share something, and I'm not going to reveal any of these rude messages that she has sent to me because it's not important to you guys. It's not relevant to you guys. It's just that firstly, she backed out at the last minute of writing that essay. She suddenly became very nervous, and I can only speculate as to why. But if you actually want to talk about the merit of her theory about this Zodiac Golden State Killer connection, well, how does that operate? Part of it is that the Zodiac Killer murdered Vern Smith on June 3rd of 1963, and then the Golden State Killer went on to murder somebody named Smith, and that was done as a signature. Smith, because they have the same name. Yeah, right. I mean, I didn't even give any commentary on that. That is just one of the examples of the Zodiac Golden State Killer connection. And some of you might even be thinking, now wait a second, Vern Smith was not even a Zodiac Killer victim. I don't believe he was. Vern Smith was the man murdered by Sandy, who was a Zodiac suspect. But, I mean, Sandy has never, of course, even been identified. We don't even know who this guy is. There were three guys that were roaming about Southern California in 1963. J.C. Reed, James Coleman, and someone using the name Sandy. The story goes that at around maybe 12:05, 12:10 a.m. on June 3rd of 1963, they knocked on the trailer door of a man named Vern Smith who lived in somewhat of a secluded area. And they said that they were out of gas, and even though it's after midnight, this guy Vern Smith agreed to help them. And while he was filling a gas can, Sandy just had a moment when he just went ballistic, and he pulled out a knife and he stabbed Vern Smith. I mean, the plan was to rob him, it was not to murder him. And these two guys, J.C. Reed and James Coleman, thought that Sandy was just too dangerous, or he's losing his mind, so they parted ways. And Sandy had $20 with him. They actually stole $360 from Vern Smith, but J.C. Reed and James Coleman lied to Sandy. They said they only found $60, so they split that in three ways, 20 for each guy, and then they went on their ways. J.C. Reed and James Coleman were apprehended, and they were interrogated separately because I believe it was Classic Chevy Cat that was asking, well, if Sandy was never caught, these two guys parted ways and they were only picked up by the police. I mean, how likely is it that Sandy actually committed the crime? Or are they just blaming him because he wasn't there? And at first I thought Sandy never existed. These guys just made up the story because they committed the murder of Vern Smith and they wanted to cover their tracks. And they just said that some type of fictional character that they were both talking about committed the crime. I mean, I thought about that, but Sandy was witnessed by other people in the previous days who had been with these guys. It seems like there was a real Sandy. And as far as did Sandy actually commit the crime, the murder of Vern Smith? And I mean, I don't think we know 100%. There's always a chance, right? But J.C. Reed and James Coleman were interrogated separately, and the interrogators found that their stories seemed to have matched up more or less, so they thought they were telling the truth about Sandy committing the stabbing, yet they were still charged with second-degree murder, and sentenced to 5 years in jail, I believe, because they were underage at the time. Sandy would have also only been 17 years old. To the best of our knowledge, I mean, that's an approximation. They don't know the guy's name, don't really know everything about him. But you're going to have to do a lot more than to point out Smith, the most common name in the English language, and act like that is some type of Golden State Killer connection. And the names of the Golden State Killer's victims with the last name Smith were Charlene and Lyman Smith, who were murdered on March 13th of 1980, citing VCStar.com for that. So, well, I mean, we could just leave it at there, but another point that is brought up by Ann Penn and the Zodiac Golden State Killer connection is that she believes that the Golden State Killer was not only the Zodiac, not only Sandy, but also committed the 1970 murder of Nancy Benelak. Yet, she excludes a particular Zodiac victim from the chronology, and that is the murder of Sherry Jo Bates. When I was talking to Ann Penn about this on the Zodiac Killer channel, she said that she did not believe the Zodiac killer murdered Sherry Jo Bates. She did not believe the Golden State Killer murdered Sherry Jo Bates because they have a full DNA profile from the killer, and the DNA of Joseph D'Angelo has been extracted and compared. And there was not matched, like, what is it called, like the CODIS system or something? It didn't set off any type of connection. So she excluded Sherry Jo Bates from her theory. But the problem is, there also is a full DNA profile in the Nancy Benelak case, because Nancy Benelak was murdered on October 25th of 1970 at approximately 11:30 p.m. She was killed inside her home, and during the attack, they believe that the perpetrator cut himself, and they do have his DNA. They've identified a DNA sample from blood, and that's how they believe it happened. So, well, by that same sort of thinking, then Nancy Benelak should also be excluded from her theory. And I could go on, but I think that you get the general idea. I just wanted to throw in some additional points. And even though Ann Penn has been somewhat rude to me in our private communications, to say something praiseworthy about her, I really appreciate that she tries to contact detectives, she tries to get access to files, and that she, does something that has a double-sided approach. There's like two sides of the coin with her approach to the true crime world and research. And the first is that she does not use a lot of internet sleuthing, she does not use a lot of message boards and having discussions with people, and what I like to do, run my mouth on the internet. She doesn't do that. And firstly, that is very good because it doesn't cloud your thinking with someone else trying to persuade you to something that may or may not be factually accurate. In the true crime world, it is not about who can tell the best story. It is not about who is the best debater, who can argue the best case. I mean, maybe you can save that for the lawyers, like that aspect of true crime, the courtroom battles, who can just spin the story to a desired outcome. But I don't care about any of that. I don't even care how articulate someone is or how well they can stitch together some type of very, very entertaining storytelling masterpiece. What actually happened? That's what I want to know. What actually happened? What is the truth? Even if it is somewhat mundane, or even if it is somewhat, like, mind-blowing, I want to know the truth. So while it is true that people on the internet can cloud your thinking, there is a pro and a con. There is the other side of the coin, and that is that you get to be challenged. If you put out your idea, people will challenge it, criticize it. Other people can raise awareness to certain points where you might be missing something. So many times I've learned about new facts because of you guys in the comments section. So please leave some excellent comments. You guys are all awesome. I appreciate every single one of you. But sometimes, people will say things that are, inaccurate, but I have learned things from you guys just sharing responses, or you correct me if I make a mistake, and sometimes it's something very simple, like, oh, that event didn't happen on this day, it actually happened 3 weeks earlier. It's not like it hurts my feelings or anything. If anything, it gives me a greater understanding. Then you look into what someone has said. Oh, it turns out, yeah, that event did happen on that day, and or not 3 weeks later as I had previously thought. I don't know everything, and nobody in the world knows everything. Even the smartest person in the world doesn't know everything. So I think that is somewhat lacking from her presentation, because she kind of stays away from being challenged in the open air forum, so to speak, because other people do not get to call her out on some types of, I guess, less than credible claims like, oh, Vern Smith was murdered in 1963, and Charlene and Lyman Smith were murdered in 1980. Therefore, it is the same person. Yeah, you need to call somebody out on that and say that that is an insufficient connection. That is an insufficient way of thinking. And now moving on to our next segment here, I was following the local news in West Virginia, and I happened to catch a news report that was first mentioned on just our local TV station because it happened in the neighboring state of Virginia and the DC area, and then the nationwide news media has been going with the story of the shopping cart killer. So let's hear about him. And we're going to have an article from CBS News to help us out. This one was posted on December 17th of 2021, CBS News and the Associated Press, just citing the source. Police in Virginia say the discovery of 4 bodies at 2 different locations in the state are the work of a serial killer who used a shopping cart to transport his victims' bodies after meeting them on dating sites. At a press conference Friday, Fairfax County Police Chief Kevin Davis dubbed the suspect 35-year-old Anthony Robinson of Washington, D.C., the shopping cart killer. Investigators believe that there are likely more victims, possibly beyond Virginia and up the East Coast. And some of the points that they were sharing on the local news is that this guy, Anthony Robinson, was luring women off of the internet, particularly dating sites, and he was using that as a means to find his victims. If that is the case, I would expect that there would be more than 4 victims. An example of a serial killer who is not posting a high body count is one who gets interrupted in his actions. And at the age of 35, I could understand that. I mean, I think a typical reign of terror for a serial killer is to go from perhaps the age of 25 to 40, but not many serial killers operate into their elder years because there is a decline in testosterone. But if this guy could easily meet women off of dating sites, I would expect that there would be more than 4 victims. They just haven't been identified yet, but it is uncertain. After he inflicts trauma to his victims and then kills them, he transports their bodies to their final resting place in a shopping cart. I think that is just a very bizarre and practically ineffective means of going about the crime, but that's what they say. Davis said Robinson was taken into custody in Rockingham County last month. He lived in multiple locations along the East Coast in recent years. Police in Harrisonburg arrested Robinson last month and charged him with 2 counts of murder after finding 2 bodies in a vacant lot in the city. The good thing is he is in custody. The challenge that remains is identifying the other victims. We believe that there may be other victims in the area and we need to act now. Evidence uncovered after Robinson's arrest led the police to search an area near Moon Inn in Fairfax County, south of Alexandria. That is the name of a motel. During the search, the detectives noticed a shopping cart and recalled that a shopping cart had been used to transport the bodies in Harrisonburg, said Ed O'Carroll, commander of the Major Crimes Unit in Fairfax. And they actually have a photo here on their website of a red shopping cart from Target. Again, horribly, horribly conspicuous, but if I'm using that word correctly. Near the shopping cart was a large plastic container that held the remains of 2 women. One of them had tentatively been identified as Cheyenne Brown, age 29, whose disappearance had been under investigation by the Washington, D.C. police. The second body, found in Fairfax County, has not yet been identified. The 3 victims who have been identified all went missing in the last few months. Police say that they are trying to research Robinson's life going back many years to see if there might be more victims. That's what worries us. He didn't suddenly turn in to this person 3 months ago. Yeah, exactly. That's what I think that, they would have a very small, concentrated reign of terror. Maybe if somebody started committing the crimes and was extremely sloppy and he was caught immediately. And we do see cases like that from time to time, and I have a couple episodes about serial killers who have smaller body counts. Perhaps the serial killer John Hughes here on this channel, and even Kenneth Harrison, who is known as the Giggler. He only murdered 4 people, to the best of our knowledge. I'm really quite curious if Kenneth Harrison actually murdered his final victim, Kenneth Martin. But I believe that in both those cases, they were interrupted, they were caught, they were apprehended by law enforcement, and they were unable to keep killing. But with this guy, as I said, it seems like he's meeting these women rather easily, so my gut instinct is telling me that he didn't turn into that type of person in 3 months, so to speak. It's possible, but I don't believe it. That's what worries us, Davis said. He didn't turn into this person 3 months ago. All 3 victims who have been identified met Robinson through dating websites. Police believe that his dating history may provide clues into any additional victims. Police did not say whether the victims were sexually assaulted, but Davis stated bluntly during the press conference that he did unspeakable things to his victims. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. And when I was growing up, we would talk about serial killers from time to time. John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, the Zodiac Killer, Jack the Ripper, even. But that's just all we really knew. No one was talking about Roger Kibbe, the I-5 Strangler. No one was talking about Herb Baumeister, the I-70 Strangler. Nobody was looking into people like this person here, Anthony Robinson, this shopping cart killer. Granted, he didn't exist at the time when I was a kid growing up, but the point I'm trying to illustrate is that there are so many more serial killers than we were aware of. And these people operate so frequently, and they do absolutely horrible and sinister things. A lot of it is because of the very destructive elements that they experienced in their childhood, partnered with genetic issues and mental illness. But I was discussing this with Soren Korsgaard, who is the author of the book America's Jack the Ripper, talking about the Zodiac Killer. He also runs Korsgaard Publishing, and he has been interviewed by me on the Zodiac Killer channel's Interview with the Expert series. And he wanted to share something with me that I think is maybe something that was missing from my analysis of serial killers. And that is that it's not only about genetics, it's not only about neurological functioning, it's not only about child abuse, it's also about the hierarchy of values. There is something in their belief system where they have programmed themselves to believe that they aren't doing something bad. Like their belief system, the things that they value are completely out of whack. And they've convinced themselves that they are not doing something that is immoral. And a lot of it is just about, well, I think there's also the element of not getting caught, like the lacking in the fear of pain and punishment. They think they can get away with it. And something that I also said in a recent episode about how some people commit these crimes because they want to get arrested. They want to get caught. They want to get locked up because they view their life as one of misery, and they do very, very terrible things to get out of it instead of just coming forward and telling the truth. And that's bad. That's bad, but they're deranged people. They don't always think in a clear manner. 2 victims who were found dead in Harrisonburg, Virginia, were identified as Tonita Laurie Smith, age 39, of Charlottesville, and Aline Elizabeth Redmond, she was known as Beth, age 54, of Harrisonburg. And this was once again from CBS News and the Associated Press, and this article was from December 17th of 2021. Recently on the channel, I did some episodes about the anthrax killer, and while they aren't the most popular subject in the world, I just have to share something very brief with you, because it relates to this concept of serial killer psychology. And some people believe that the anthrax killer Bruce Ivins was framed, or that he was set up as a fall guy, a scapegoat, and he didn't actually do that. Back in 2001, a series of letters were mailed containing anthrax. 5 people died from it. So whoever actually did send those would be viewed as a serial killer in my book, even though it's being committed from a distance. But there's a lot of doubt and suspicion around whether Bruce Ivins actually committed the crime. And one point that I thought was so bizarre is that it almost felt too much like a neat little package. Because I watch a lot of true crime documentaries, I listen to a lot of podcasts, I follow this subject because I want to learn more about it, and I notice these patterns and trends and similarities about what I was just talking about. Genetics, there has to be something in the genes, as well as how there is an irregularity in the way that their brain is processing emotion, and also child abuse. And with Bruce Ivins, it seemed just so basic and formulaic. They brought up all of the bad experiences in his childhood. They talked about his history of mental illness. And maybe it is just a neat little package case where, yes, that's what happens to people. And that's why they become serial killers, because of these types of experiences. Because his mother beat him and humiliated him. And his mother was also tyrannical and abusive to his father. And he had very poor relationships with women during his college years. And even though he went on to get married and to have children, he was still unable to get over those traumatic experiences. He was in therapy for years, and he was still unable to get over those traumatic experiences because he was just so completely broken, partnered with the fact that he had this history of mental illness in his family, which could range from everything from the brain is producing too much dopamine, which overwhelms the system, to there is the irregularity between the part of the brain that processes emotion and the part of the brain that deals with desire and urges. So when someone acts on destructive urges, they don't feel any emotion for the people. They lack the empathy. And just reading these very brief notes about Anthony Robinson, the shopping cart killer, and looking at how he was operating. Again, not a lot has been revealed about him. This is just my first reaction, first response to the subject. It appears to me that he was someone who was leaning more toward acting on the urges. And when we see the serial killer on television in the documentaries, and maybe they've even made some movies about them, whether it's the Zodiac or Jack the Ripper, where they're viewed as some type of evil genius who could outsmart the authorities. Let's not kid ourselves, the Zodiac killer was very lucky, and Jack the Ripper may not have even existed. But they are viewed as that, the cold, methodical, and calculating figure who could lurk in the shadows and be all devious, and is somewhat of a mastermind, so to speak. Maybe somebody like BTK would want to go into that category. Maybe somebody like the Unabomber would want to go into that category. But with this guy, the shopping cart killer, I think that we also need to remember that serial killers can be crass, lowbrow, unsophisticated, using terribly ineffective means of going about their activities, and just that they're sexual sadists. They are disgusting individuals, and they're acting on disgusting urges. And whether the serial killer is intelligent or unintelligent, they are all pathetic. There's absolutely no excuse for resorting to these types of behaviors. And I think most people are aware of that, but that point isn't emphasized enough. Many times but the serial killer does not have to be an evil genius. He can be a scumbag with a dating profile, a scumbag who decided to fork over the cash for Match.com. And that's probably going to be a story that's going to be reiterated very frequently throughout the media. Pay attention to the true crime world, because you're going to see some elements of this shopping cart killer series again. So, what do you think about anything related to serial killers? What do you think about some of the claims in the Zodiac Golden State Killer connection? Even though I said some unfavorable things about the Zodiac Golden State Killer, I would still hope to do a larger episode about it, either here or on the Zodiac Killer channel if I can collaborate with those guys again, because I think that there's more to explore. I've never done a full episode on the Golden State Killer connection. I've talked about the Zodiac Unabomber connection, even the Zodiac Anthrax connection, which is called Zodianthrax. The guy that I was just talking about, Bruce Ivans, the possibility that he was the Zodiac Killer. So I haven't done a full response to Ann Penn's writings, as well as what she has shared with me, and I was hoping to do so for a Zodiac Mondays episode. However, as I said, she backed out at the last minute from writing a piece for this channel. But that doesn't mean that I won't talk about her material. But just because I'm going to talk about her material, it doesn't mean I'm not going to call someone out when I think that they are either making up something silly or they're saying something that is just horribly, horribly ineffective. Have you ever met anyone with the last name Smith? Okay, deep breath. And moving on in our discussions here, the next one is mostly an announcement. I am a big fan of the Lord and Arts channel. I recommend that one a lot. It is hosted by John Lorne. He is also the co-host of the program Crime After Crime, which I recommend to you guys very frequently. And about 2 weeks ago, he did an episode called Brain Scratch, The Homecoming Killer, Who Murdered Blake Chappelle? And I think the easiest way to find it is searching just by that, The Homecoming Killer. And I said it was one of his better presentations recently because it explores some very dark and sinister territory. Was somebody murdered in a random act of violence? Or was somebody targeted because of a relationship he was in and targeted by his girlfriend's father? What really happened? As I said, some dark and sinister questions to explore and what could have taken place. Brain Scratch, the Homecoming Killer, Who Murdered Blake Chappelle? And it wouldn't be True Crime Talk Radio if we didn't explore the Chinese Zodiac Killer a little bit more, because it is a breaking news story, and it is one that is ongoing, where we don't know all the answers yet, and the news is still coming out very, very quickly as we speak. For example, earlier this month, there were a set of letters that were mailed within Albany, New York, from somebody claiming to be the Chinese Zodiac Killer, and the media outlets in Albany did not open the letters. They contacted the FBI, and they were instructed not to open them because they want to preserve DNA and other types of forensic material. But it turned out back in October, letters were mailed in Connecticut from this Chinese Zodiac Killer. And to help us out, we're going to hear an extended article by Taylor Hartz, and this is from theday.com, and I believe The Day is a publication in Connecticut. It's called This is the Zodiac Speaking. Newspaper receives cryptic letters. This is the Zodiac Speaking begins a letter sent to the Day newsroom similar to the letters sent to newsrooms in the late 1960s as a serial killer known as the Zodiac Killer terrorized Northern California. Zodiac, as he came to be known, killed at least 5 people in the 1960s and claimed to have killed nearly 40. Why not just say 37? Although some people did think the Zodiac murdered well over 40 people. Lyndon Lafferty actually talked about 41 was his number in his book, The Zodiac Killer Cover-Up. But anyway, in a letter dated October 18th, 2021, a person who claims to be the Chinese Zodiac Killer outlines a series of threats including plans to kill 2 men and a woman and wipe out a school bus driver and enslave people in a macabre paradise, spelling paradise Paradice. The writer even used the same misspellings as the Zodiac Killer. That would be an example of one. A cipher like the Zodiac Killer's trademark method of puzzling communication was included with the letter, sent to the New London newspaper. The FBI in Albany is investigating a series of similar letters received by newsrooms in New York, according to a statement issued by the field office. In the letter to the Day, the author claims to be a sexual predator and a killer, a prowler running wild in your reality, incarnated back into your world. I bring terror, I bring fear, I bring horror. The person claims to have been stalking children and watching a woman at a mall. I have been very patient. The time has come to kill. The person threatens, adding that he or she has been lurking in the dark. The original Zodiac Killer cipher stumped the investigators for decades. A year ago, the FBI announced that a group of international private sleuths decoded the 340 cipher. By international sleuths, I think they mean that David Oranchak is American, right? But Jarl Van Eck, one of the men who worked on that team, was from the Netherlands, and Sam Blake is Australian, if I recall correctly. The 3 guys that are given most of the credit for solving the 340 cipher. I mean, maybe someone else contributed something at some point, but those are the 3 names attached to the discovery. In a note at the end of the letter sent to the Day, the writer says, P.S. My cipher contains my identity. Let's see if you can crack it. The cipher is similar in appearance to those sent to the Chronicle decades ago. Alright, I'm just going to stop right here. Similar. I have terrible handwriting. Okay? Being honest with you, this person has even worse handwriting, especially for composing something such as a cipher. Part of me is just like, I don't even care what's in your cipher, dude. I mean, it just looks like a bunch of verbal noise. Like, if you could put noise into some type of written communication, this is what it would look like. And, I mean, where would you even begin with something like that? I mean, you're just gonna run around with your pen on the page and such. And there's a reason why the Zodiac Killer from California put such a strong amount of time and effort into creating the ciphers, because they're very neat, they're very clear. You can see all the symbols, and it doesn't just look like some giant hodgepodge of chicken scratch handwriting, but it does say Happy Halloween and Samhain from yours truly. Truly is spelled Truley, the Chinese Zodiac Killer. And then there's some weird writing numbers. There's even like a hashtag or a pound sign, I guess you could call it. Alright, so firstly, I'm noticing some similarities with the Zodiac from the 1960s. However, the person who composed this has some very notable differences. When the Zodiac was making the bus threats, this is one of my observations that I haven't read in any other place. Maybe someone else has come across it. But the Zodiac threatened to, shoot the kiddies as they come bouncing off the bus. The Zodiac said, wipe out a school bus, or the Zodiac said that he had a bus bomb, not targeting a bus driver. And I say that because a lot of people try to connect the 1962 murder of Ray Davis to the Zodiac Killer, where a man named Ray Davis was murdered in Oceanside, California in April of 1962. And then the person who committed that crime took credit for it via a phone call, and also said that he was going to get a bus driver next. Ray Davis was a taxi driver, and he said, I'm going to get a bus driver next. I always pointed out that the Zodiac did not threaten a bus driver exactly. He talked about something like a bus bomb, but not saying that I'm going to kill the bus driver. It seemed more that it was about the bus and the passengers, and I think that's very important, because some people, like the people who think that Bill Menser was the Zodiac Killer, pointed out that Bill Menser was a former bus driver. That is just one difference that I noticed. There's also something here in the article from theday.com. It says, unlike most original Zodiac ciphers, it contains repeating words including mountain, devil, and spider. Well, the Zodiac talked about Mount Diablo very, very frequently. I mean, in multiple communications, the Zodiac wanted to draw attention to Mount Diablo, and it could be, as Michael Cole put in his Zodiac Revisited trilogy, that the Zodiac wanted to think that he was on top of Mount Diablo. He is even higher than the devil. He is the epitome of evil and epitome of darkness. I don't recall anything about a spider in the Zodiac letters, but that may be something that is quite different. Okay, now here's something else. In the letter to the day, the author claims to be a sexual predator and a killer, a prowler running wild in your reality, incarnated back into your world. I bring terror, I bring fear, I bring horror. To do a pure compare and contrast exercise, I think all of that is outside of the 1960s Zodiac's frame of mind. Firstly, the Zodiac actually said that killing was better than sex, very clearly in the 408 cipher. It is better than getting your rocks off with a girl, not meaning that it really isn't sexually motivated. It's more like hunting people for sport, and that's really what the Zodiac persona in popular terms has been viewed as, but there are people who take exception to that, and maybe we can talk about them in a future episode. But as far as a prowler running wild, I mean, incarnated back into your world, I think all of that is just outside of the California Zodiac's state of mind. And the reason I'm telling you this is, let's get right to it. I think that this is somebody who read up on the Zodiac case and couldn't resist the urge to fabricate letters that were similar to the Zodiac's. Not trying to make anyone think that he is the Zodiac of the 1960s and then writing letters well into the 70s. No. He's not trying to do that. This is somebody who is writing letters just because he wanted to be part of the action. I don't think this person is a real killer. I mean, based on what has been shared, I don't think so. They just wanted to see what it was like to write a confusing cipher and mail it in, and Yeah, get off on the whole sort of attention where no one actually knows it's you. And that's the same type of power tripping things like, I have the secret knowledge. It's so simple, you fools can't figure it out. That type of power tripping. But no, I don't think this person is a real serial killer. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but I don't think this person is. They just wanted to be part of the game, and it's not a game. Don't misunderstand me, but that's what this person is viewing it as. They think that it's a type of entertaining ruse that they are pulling. It is a foul prank on society, and emphasis on the word foul. This is bad. I mean, people should not be doing that. And in some cases, if people write fake letters like impersonating such and such, it could be an obstruction of justice if they actually do impersonate someone. The Chinese Zodiac killer seems rather original. I mean, there was the New York Zodiac copycat, Eddie Seda, and some people think that that's what this person is. However, this seems more like an attention seeker than a serial killer, and there are no reports yet of some doing something like mailing in a piece of a victim's bloody shirt, and I have not heard or read a single iota of information that this person has actually committed any crimes other than mailing these letters. But what do you think? And please feel free to weigh in the comment section down below and share anything that you would like. You can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com and tell me what you think about the Chinese Zodiac killer, about the Golden State Killer Zodiac connection, and any of the other true crime cases that have been discussed here, whether you have something to say about the homecoming killer, the anthrax killer, anything at all in the comments down below. And thank you for listening to this episode of True Crime Talk Radio. And to anyone who is listening to these things as they come out live, feel free to tune in later this week when we celebrate Christmas on the channel. Okay, that's all for me now. See you over on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.